The vast emptiness of space held many secrets, but Captain Reed of the salvage ship Star Seeker never expected to find anything quite like this. His crew had been mapping the outer reaches of the Centauri sector when their sensors picked up a large metallic mass drifting silently through the void. "Captain, you might want to see this," called out First Officer Miller from his station. The main screen flickered to life, showing what appeared to be an ancient warship. Its dark hull was scarred with micrometeor impacts, and layers of space dust covered its surface. Reed leaned forward in his chair, his antenna twitching with interest. "Magnify the image," he ordered. As the view zoomed in, faded letters became visible on the hull. "U.S. Thunder, a human vessel," spoke Wilson, their historian, with obvious disdain in his voice. "Look at those primitive weapon mounts and those basic thrusters. This must be from their early space age, perhaps 300 years old." The bridge crew chuckled. Everyone knew humans were the newcomers to the galactic community, barely able to achieve faster-than-light travel a century ago. This relic was proof of their humble beginnings. "Those engine designs are practically ancient," commented Engineer Parker, his scaled fingers flying over the console. "They were still using nuclear fusion back then. How primitive can you get?" Reed studied the ship with growing amusement. The human vessel was massive by their standards, nearly a kilometer long, but its design seemed clunky and inefficient. The weapon systems were obvious and exposed, unlike the elegant hidden arrays of modern warships. "Run a full scan," Reed ordered. "Let's see what kind of scrap value we can get from this museum piece." The scans revealed more details about the ship's construction. Thick armor plating, multiple cargo bays, and what appeared to be crew quarters for several hundred personnel. But everything was cold and lifeless. No power signatures, no active systems, just a dead hulk floating in space. "Look at these readings," Wilson said, shaking his head. "They used physical armor plating instead of energy shields. And those cannons, they actually fired solid projectiles. It's like finding a steam engine in space." The crew spent the next hour documenting their find and preparing for salvage operations. According to galactic law, any vessel abandoned for more than 50 years became salvage rights. This ship had clearly been drifting for much longer. "Deploy the tractor beams," Reed commanded. "We'll tow it back to Station 7 and break it down for materials. The humans won't mind. They'd probably be embarrassed to know this old thing is still out here." As the Star Seeker's tractor beams locked onto the U.S. Thunder, something unexpected happened. A faint power signature flickered deep within the human vessel, barely noticeable on their sensors. "Probably just some residual energy in the old systems," Engineer Parker dismissed. These ancient human ships were known to use backup batteries that could last centuries. Reed nodded in agreement, but something about the ship made his scales itch. Why would humans abandon such a large warship? Even if it was outdated, the resources alone would have been worth recovering. "Begin towing procedures," he ordered, pushing aside his concerns. "Set course for Station 7. The salvage crew watched as their tractor beams slowly pulled the massive human vessel into formation. Its dark hull seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars, giving it an ominous appearance despite its supposed obsolescence. "You know what they say about human technology," Wilson mused as they began their journey. "They reached for the stars before they were ready, using brute force and primitive science to achieve what other races did with elegance and patience." The bridge crew shared another laugh at humanity's expense. They had all heard stories about the early human space vessels, how they strapped themselves to explosive tubes and hoped for the best, how they built massive ships to compensate for inefficient designs, how they relied on mechanical solutions instead of energy manipulation. None of them noticed the small, pulsing light that had begun blinking deep within the U.S. Thunder's command center, nor the encrypted signal that briefly transmitted toward Earth space. The old warship may have appeared dead, but something aboard was very much alive, silently watching and waiting. Little did they know, Their laughter would soon turn to awe, and their mockery would become regret. The U.S. Thunder held secrets that would change their understanding of humanity forever. Station 7's massive docking bay barely accommodated the U.S. Thunder. The ancient human warship now rested in the center of the facility, its dark hull making the modern ships around it look small and delicate by comparison. "Begin the salvage operation," Captain Reed ordered as his team prepared their cutting tools. "Let's see what treasures this old human relic is hiding." But before they could start, Engineer Parker's scanner began beeping rapidly. "Captain, I'm detecting a life sign aboard. It's faint, but it's there, in what appears to be their command center." "Impossible," Wilson scoffed. "This ship has been dead for centuries." Despite his doubts, the historian followed Reed and a security team as they made their way through the Thunder's silent corridors. The inside of the ship was surprisingly clean. No dust covered the floors, and the air wasn't stale as expected in an abandoned vessel. Their lights revealed perfectly maintained corridors and sealed doorways. "This doesn't feel right," muttered one of the security officers. "Everything's too perfect." They found the source of the life sign in a small chamber next to the bridge. A single cryopod hummed quietly, its power supply somehow still functioning after all these years. Frost covered the transparent surface, but they could make out a human figure inside. "Should we wake it?" Parker asked, studying the ancient but surprisingly sophisticated controls. Before Reed could answer, the pod systems activated. Steam hissed as the seal broke, and the cover slowly lifted. Inside, a human male opened his eyes and sat up with practiced ease, as if he'd only been sleeping for minutes instead of centuries. "Welcome aboard the U.S. Thunder," the human said calmly, his voice steady despite just waking from cryo-sleep. "I am Technical Officer Thomas, the ship's caretaker." The aliens stared in shock. The human wore a simple black uniform without any fancy decorations. His gray hair and lined face suggested age, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "This vessel is now salvage," Reed declared, recovering from his surprise. "According to galactic law." "I'm afraid that's incorrect," Thomas interrupted politely. "This ship was never abandoned. I've been here the whole time, maintaining systems and watching over her." Wilson laughed. "Maintaining what systems? This is clearly an obsolete vessel. Those weapons wouldn't even scratch modern shields. The engines are primitive fusion drives. What could you possibly be maintaining?" Thomas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "If you say so, I simply request that you be careful with your salvage operation. Some of these primitive systems can be quite sensitive." Reed's antenna twitched with annoyance. "You have no authority here, human. This ship is ours now. Security, escort him to a holding cell." "As you wish," Thomas replied, still unnaturally calm. "But I should mention that any attempt to cut into the Thunder's hull without proper shutdown procedures might trigger some unfortunate automated responses." Parker had already started scanning the nearest wall panel. "Captain, I'm getting some strange readings. The metal composition isn't matching any known human alloys from that era. More primitive human tricks," Wilson dismissed. "They probably just used some cheap metal mixture. Let's start with the cargo holds. They're usually the easiest to strip." As the salvage crew began setting up their equipment, Thomas watched silently from between his security escorts. His hand briefly touched a hidden panel on the wall, and deep within the ship, more systems quietly came to life. "You know," Thomas said conversationally, "there's an old human saying, 'Don't judge a book by its cover.' We don't need human wisdom," Reed snapped. "This ship is nothing but scrap metal. Parker, begin cutting procedures on Cargo Bay 1. Thomas shook his head slightly. "I really wouldn't do that if I were you." But the aliens ignored him. As Parker activated his cutting beam, a subtle vibration ran through the ship's hull. Warning lights that had seemed dead for centuries suddenly flickered to life. "Last chance," Thomas offered. "There's a proper way to do this." Reed turned to bark another order at the human. But a sudden alarm from the station cut him off. First Officer Miller's voice crackled over the comm. "Captain, multiple ships just appeared at the system's edge. They're not responding to hails, and their weapons are hot." Thomas straightened his uniform. "Well," he said quietly, "this should be interesting." The old human's calm demeanor finally made Reed feel uneasy. Something about the way Thomas looked at the ship, like a parent watching over a sleeping child, suggested they had gravely misunderstood what they'd found. The station's alarm continued to blare as Captain Reed rushed back to the command center, leaving Thomas under guard. The main screen showed 12 warships approaching, their designs marking them as raiders, the most feared pirates in this sector. "Status report," Reed demanded, his scales flat against his neck in stress. "They've surrounded the station," First Officer Miller reported, his fingers dancing across the controls. "No response to our hails. Their weapons are charged, and their shields are up." Station 7 was a salvage facility, not a military base. They had basic defenses, but nothing that could stand against a raider fleet. Reed knew this, and from the scared looks on his crew's faces, they knew it too. The main screen crackled to life, showing a scared face with red eyes. The raider commander. "This is Captain Grell of the Black Fleet. Your station has something we want. Surrender now, and we might let some of you live." Reed's antenna drooped. The raiders were known for their cruelty. If they took the station, death would be the kindest fate anyone could hope for. "What do you want?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "That human warship you found." Grell smiled, showing sharp teeth. "Our scouts spotted you towing it. Hand it over, along with any data you collected about it." Before Reed could respond, Thomas's calm voice came from the doorway. Despite his guards, the old human had followed them to the command center. "I wouldn't make threats around this particular ship," Thomas warned. "She doesn't like bullies." Everyone turned to stare at him. Even Grell's image on the screen shifted focus. A human. The raider commander laughed. "An old one at that. Tell me, Ancient One, what exactly will your museum piece do?" "Rusted us." Thomas walked to a console, ignoring the guards who tried to stop him. "This station has no chance against your fleet. But the Thunder? Well, she's a different story." Wilson snorted. "That Relic? We scanned it ourselves. It has no active weapons, primitive armor, and basic fusion drives. It's space junk." "Actually," Thomas said, typing at the console, "you scanned what we wanted you to scan. The Thunder is something quite different." His fingers pressed a final button, and a new alarm sounded, this one coming from the old warship itself. "You're welcome to try taking her," Thomas continued, looking at Grell's image. "But fair warning, the last group that tried didn't survive to regret it." The raider commander roared with laughter, his crew joining in. "Look at its weapons. Physical cannons. Metal armor. That ship's design is centuries old." "Yes," Thomas smiled. "That's exactly what you're supposed to think." Suddenly, the lights in the station flickered. Through the main viewport, they could see the U.S. Thunder beginning to change. Layers of seemingly solid hull plating shifted and moved. Weapons ports that had looked rusted and ancient smoothly opened, revealing gleaming technology beneath. "Impossible," Parker whispered, checking his scanner. "The power readings, they're off the scale." The Thunder's surface rippled like liquid metal, the dull gray color fading away to reveal a hull that seemed to absorb light itself. Where there had been obvious weapon mounts, now sleek, advanced arrays emerged. The primitive thrusters transformed into propulsion systems that made the aliens' best tech look like children's toys. "What kind of ship is this?" Reed asked, his voice barely a whisper. "U.S. Thunder," Thomas answered proudly, "is a Phantom-class stealth warship. The primitive design is a disguise, meant to fool overconfident enemies into underestimating her. Those raiders out there, they're about to learn why that's a bad idea." On the screen, Grell's smile had vanished. His sensors must have shown him what they were all seeing: the massive warship coming fully awake. Last chance to retreat, Thomas offered the raider commander. The Thunder doesn't like to start fights, but she sure knows how to finish them. Grell snarled, "Kill them all. Fire everything." Thomas shook his head sadly. They never learn. He pressed one more button, and the Thunder's engines flared to life. A deep, powerful thrum that vibrated through the entire station. The old human turned to Reed and his shocked crew. "You might want to watch this. It's not often you get to see a primitive human warship in action." As the Raider fleet opened fire, the U.S. Thunder roared to life, ready to show everyone why humans had earned their place among the stars, not through brute force as many believed, but through cunning, deception, and technology far beyond what anyone suspected. The first Raider shots streaked through space, their energy weapons lighting up the void. But before they could strike, the U.S. Thunder moved with impossible speed, its massive bulk gliding like a dancer among the stars. "That's impossible," Parker muttered, checking his instruments again. "Nothing that big should move that fast." Thomas stood calmly at the control panel, his fingers moving with practiced ease. The Thunder was built to break rules, not follow them. "Watch closely. You're about to see why humanity keeps most of its true military technology hidden." The ship's transformation continued. What had appeared to be solid hull plates now flowed like liquid metal, revealing layer after layer of advanced technology. The bridge crew of Station 7 watched in stunned silence as the primitive vessel became something else entirely. "Quantum shift armor," Thomas explained as the hull rippled. "The outer layer you saw was a disguise. Underneath, every plate can change its molecular structure instantly to adapt to any attack." A Raider beam struck the Thunder directly, and simply disappeared into the dark surface without effect. The hull at the point of impact had transformed into a perfect energy sink, absorbing the blast completely. Those aren't just armor plates, Reed realized, his antenna twitching in shock. "They're active nano-forged battle plates," Thomas nodded. "Each one contains billions of microscopic machines that can reconfigure themselves instantly. The entire ship is alive, in a way." The Thunder's weapon ports opened fully now, revealing systems that made the aliens' jaws drop. Where they had expected to see primitive projectile cannons, there were instead arrays of technology that seemed to bend light itself. "But our scans," Wilson stammered. "They showed basic fusion drives and simple weapons." Thomas smiled. "The Thunder has 7 layers of sensor deflection. She only lets you see what she wants you to see. Rather like how a skilled hunter disguises their true strength until the right moment." The ship's engines pulsed with a deep blue light. What had appeared to be crude thruster nozzles were now revealed as quantum drive matrices, each one capable of manipulating space-time itself for propulsion. "The Raiders are launching missiles," Miller reported from his station. "Good," Thomas said. "Now you'll see why we built her this way." The Thunder's surface rippled again. Dozens of points across the hull suddenly projected overlapping energy fields, creating a defensive network that made modern shields look primitive by comparison. "That's not standard shield technology," Parker said, his scanner smoking slightly as it tried to analyze the readings. "No," Thomas agreed. "It's something much better. We call it the Aegis system, a dynamic defense grid that learns from every attack and adapts in real time." The incoming missiles struck the energy fields and simply ceased to exist. They didn't explode. They didn't break apart. They simply vanished, their energy and matter absorbed and redistributed through the Thunder systems. "The ship," Reed whispered, "it's not just absorbing the attacks. It's feeding on them." Thomas nodded. "Energy can't be destroyed, only transformed. The Thunder uses enemy weapons against them. Each attack makes her stronger." The bridge crew watched in awe as more of the ship's true nature was revealed. Hidden hangars opened, but instead of launching fighters, they released swarms of small, silvery objects that moved with perfect coordination. "Combat drones," Wilson guessed. Smart matter, Thomas corrected. Each particle is a fully autonomous unit that can combine with others to form whatever we need. Weapons, shields, repairs, or even new ship components. The Thunder isn't just a warship. She's a mobile factory of endless possibilities. The Raider fleet had stopped firing, clearly reassessing their situation. Their sensors must have been showing them what Station 7's crew was seeing, a vessel that defied their understanding of what was possible. Should we run? Grell's voice came over the comm, fear now evident in his tone. Too late, Thomas replied softly. You chose to attack. Now you get to see what a primitive human warship can really do. The Thunder's main weapons powered up, energy coursing through systems that had laid dormant for centuries. What had looked like simple cannon barrels now glowed with an inner light that hurt to look at directly. Quantum cascade arrays online, a new voice announced. The Thunder's eye awakening fully. All systems optimal. Combat protocols engage. Thomas turned to the stunned alien crew. You might want to hold onto something. When the Thunder roars, space itself listens. The human warship's transformation was complete. Where a relic had floated hours before, now hung humanity's true face of war, a masterpiece of deception and technological superiority ready to unleash its power. The Raiders fired first, a desperate volley of their most powerful weapons. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and antimatter missiles streaked toward the U.S. Thunder. For a moment, the station crew held their breath, despite Thomas's confidence. Target analysis complete. The Thunder's AI announced calmly. 12 hostile vessels. Threat level moderate. Permission to engage. Granted, Thomas nodded. Show them why humans love their old ships. What happened next made everyone's jaw drop. The Thunder didn't just dodge the incoming fire. It danced through it. The massive warship moved like water, flowing around enemy attacks with impossible grace. Those shots that did hit simply vanished into its adaptive hull. First lesson, Thomas commented, never trust what humans tell you about their military technology. The Thunder's response was devastating. Its quantum cascade arrays fired, releasing beams of pure white energy that twisted through space in ways that defied physics. 3 Raider ships simply ceased to exist, their matter converted to energy and absorbed by the Thunder systems. By the stars, Parker whispered, his scanner now completely fried. That's not just a weapon. It's rewriting reality itself. The remaining Raiders scattered, their formation breaking apart in panic. But the Thunder was just getting started. The swarm of smart matter particles surrounded one Raider ship, transforming into a net of energy that crushed the vessel like paper. Second lesson, Thomas continued. Humans love redundancy. Everything on this ship serves multiple purposes. The Thunder's hull rippled again, this time launching what looked like solid chunks of its armor. These fragments accelerated toward 2 more Raider ships, transforming mid-flight into weapon platforms that opened fire from point-blank range. Those are just pieces of the hull, Wilson exclaimed. The entire ship is a weapon. Thomas explained. Every plate, every component can become whatever we need in battle. Grell's voice crackled over the comm, now filled with terror. What are you? This isn't possible. No species has this level of technology. That's exactly what we wanted everyone to think, Thomas replied. Humans learned long ago that being underestimated is a powerful advantage. The Thunder demonstrated this point by splitting its main beam into 12 smaller ones, each tracking a different target. When they fired, they bent around the Raiders' shields as if the energy barriers weren't even there. Their shields, Reed gasped. The beams just ignored them completely. Can't block what you don't understand, Thomas said. Those shields were designed to stop known weapons. The Thunder systems operate on principles your scientists haven't even theorized yet. 2 more Raider ships exploded, their reactors overloaded by weapons they couldn't comprehend. Another tried to jump to faster than light speed, but found itself held in place by the Thunder's gravity anchors. technology disguised as simple maneuvering thrusters. "Please," Grell begged. "We surrender. We'll leave and never return." The Thunder's response was to launch another wave of smart matter, this time forming a perfect sphere around Grell's flagship. The sphere contracted slightly, crushing the ship's weapons and engines, but leaving the crew compartment intact. Third lesson. Thomas said firmly, "Humans show mercy, but we never forget. Your ship's crew will live to spread the word. Don't mistake our kindness for weakness." The remaining raiders powered down their weapons, finally accepting defeat. The Thunder's smart matter swarm surrounded each ship, ensuring they couldn't escape or cause more trouble. Final combat analysis. The Thunder's AI reported 8 enemy vessels neutralized, 3 disabled, 1 contained, 0 civilian casualties, 0 structural damage to Station 7. Combat efficiency rating. Optimal. The station crew stared at the battlefield in stunned silence. Just minutes ago, they had faced certain death at the hands of the sector's most feared pirates. Now those same pirates were helpless, defeated by a ship they had dismissed as space junk. "I don't understand," Reed finally said. "If humans have this technology, why pretend to be less advanced? Why maintain the deception?" Thomas smiled, but this time it reached his eyes. "Because, Captain Reed, the best shield isn't one made of energy or metal. It's making your enemies think they're stronger than you. While they laugh at our primitive technology, we prepare for the day we might really need ships like the Thunder." The station crew looked at the ancient-appearing warship with new eyes, finally understanding that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their advanced technology. It was their ability to hide it in plain sight. As the Thunder's smart matter drones escorted the captured raider ships to secure holding positions, Captain Reed and his crew gathered in Station 7's main conference room. Thomas stood before them, ready to explain what they had witnessed. "I suppose you all have questions," the human said, looking at their still shocked faces. His black uniform seemed different now, no longer simple, but elegantly dangerous. "How many more ships like the Thunder exist?" Wilson asked first, his historian's curiosity overwhelming his earlier arrogance. Thomas smiled. "Think about every obsolete human warship you've ever seen or heard about, every museum piece floating in space, every primitive vessel that somehow survived centuries longer than it should have." The aliens looked at each other as understanding dawned. Those weren't relics at all. They were wolves in sheep's clothing, waiting silently among the stars. "The entire 7th Fleet," Parker whispered. "The one everyone laughs at because they use outdated ships, is one of our most advanced combat forces," Thomas confirmed. "The older a human ship looks, the more dangerous it probably is." Reed's antenna twitched nervously. "But why? Why go through all this deception?" Thomas walked to the window, looking out at the Thunder. Its hull had returned to its disguised state, once again appearing old and primitive. "Humans learned something important when we first reached the stars. The greatest advantage isn't having the best technology. It's having technology your enemies don't know about." He turned back to face them. "Every race we met judged us by their standards. They saw our visible technology and assumed they knew our limits. None of them asked why a species that could reach the stars would keep using seemingly obsolete designs." "The Thunder isn't just a warship," Miller realized. "It's a teacher." "Exactly," Thomas nodded. "Every system on board is designed to look like something else. Those primitive fusion drives, quantum slipstream engines in disguise, the basic armor, adaptive nanoforge plating that can become almost anything. Even the ship's AI pretends to be a simple computer until it's needed. But maintaining such deception across your entire fleet," Reed shook his head. "The resources required, the coordination needed, is nothing compared to the advantage it gives us." Thomas explained. "While other races focus on building bigger ships and stronger weapons, we focus on making our technology invisible. The Thunder could have destroyed those raiders in seconds, but letting them fire first taught them, and you, An important lesson. Never underestimate humanity, Wilson said quietly, understanding at last. More than that, Thomas corrected. Never assume you know everything about your potential enemies or allies. Humanity hasn't survived this long by showing all our cards at once. Parker raised his hand like a student. The smart matter technology. Why haven't we ever detected it before? Because it's programmed to look like normal hull material under any scan. The Raiders' weapons didn't just fail because they were weaker. They failed because they were fighting technology they couldn't even detect properly. Thomas walked to a console and brought up a holographic display of the Thunder's true systems. The aliens gasped at the complexity they saw. Layers upon layers of technology, each disguised as something simpler, each capable of transforming into multiple other systems as needed. This is why we keep the Thunder and ships like her active, Thomas continued. They're not just weapons. They're reminders that appearances can be deceiving. Every time someone laughs at a primitive human vessel, every time they mock our obsolete technology, they strengthen our disguise. And if a real threat ever appears, Reed asked, then humanity will reveal its true strength. The Thunder is just a glimpse of what we can do when we need to. There's a reason we're so relaxed about showing our basic technology to the galaxy. It's not the technology we're worried about. The station crew sat in silence, processing this revelation. Their entire understanding of humanity had been turned upside down. The race they had dismissed as newcomers now seemed far more dangerous and far more clever than anyone had suspected. One last question, Reed said. Why tell us all this now? Why reveal these secrets? Thomas's expression became serious. Because sometimes the best way to keep a secret is to share it with the right people. You've seen what humanity can do. Now you can help spread the real message. Don't judge us by what you think you see. Judge us by what we choose not to show. 3 days after the battle, Station 7 buzzed with activity. News of the Thunder's true nature had spread quickly through the sector, despite efforts to keep it quiet. Ships passing through now gave the seemingly ancient human vessel a wide berth, its innocent appearance no longer fooling anyone. Captain Reed stood in his office, watching through the viewport as the Thunder's smart matter drones finished processing the captured raider vessels. Thomas was preparing to leave, his mission of maintaining the ship's disguise no longer necessary at this station. The galaxy will never look at human ships the same way again, Reed said as Thomas entered the office. Not after what happened here. That's true, Thomas agreed. At least in this sector. But there are countless sectors, and humanity has many secrets left. This is just one small revelation in a much larger game. A message alert flashed on Reed's screen. More ships were arriving in the system, but these weren't raiders or traders. The sleek vessels bore the markings of various alien military forces, all drawn by rumors of what had happened. They're coming to see the Thunder, Wilson observed from his station. Everyone wants to know if the stories are true. Thomas smiled. Let them come. The Thunder has already shown what she needed to show. Now she'll go back to being what everyone expects. Just another old human warship, hardly worth noticing. But we know different, Parker said, his scaled fingers still trying to decode the readings he'd taken during the battle. We know what lies beneath that humble exterior. Do you? Thomas asked mysteriously. The Thunder showed you some of her capabilities, yes. But who's to say those weren't just another layer of deception? Perhaps what you saw was just another disguise, hiding something even more advanced. The aliens looked at each other uneasily. The thought that the impressive display of technology might have been yet another smokescreen was unsettling. Reed's antenna twitched. Are you saying the Thunder is even more powerful than what we saw? I'm saying, Thomas replied carefully, that humanity has learned to wear many masks. Sometimes we show strength to remind others we're not weak. Other times we show weakness to hide our strength. The trick is never knowing which is which. Outside, the Thunder's hull rippled slightly, maintenance drones moving across its surface like tiny stars. restoring its aged appearance. Soon it would look completely harmless again, just another relic of humanity's early space age. "What happens to the raiders?" Miller asked, watching as station security processed the captured pirates. "They'll spread the word," Thomas said. "Not about the Thunder's technology. That would be too specific, too easy to dismiss. No, they'll spread something far more valuable: doubt. Every time someone sees a human ship now, they'll wonder what it's really capable of." The military vessels were getting closer, their sensors no doubt trying to penetrate the Thunder's disguise. But the old warship had already shifted back to its harmless appearance, its true nature hidden once more behind layers of carefully crafted deception. "You've changed how everyone will see humanity," Reed realized, "not through fear of your strength, but through uncertainty about your capabilities." Thomas nodded. "The best defense isn't making your enemies fear you. It's making them unable to calculate whether fighting you is worth the risk. Every human ship they see now could be another Thunder, waiting quietly for the right moment." As if to emphasize his point, another human vessel appeared at the edge of the system. It looked even older than the Thunder, its hull marked with rust, and its engines sputtering visibly. The arriving military ships barely gave it a glance. Thomas's eyes twinkled. "Funny how they don't seem interested in that ship, isn't it? Almost like they're too focused on the Thunder to notice anything else." The station crew watched the old human ship pass by, each of them now wondering what secrets it might be hiding beneath its decrepit exterior. "Time for me to go," Thomas said, straightening his uniform. "The Thunder has other stations to visit, other lessons to teach. Remember what you learned here, about humanity, about assumptions, and about the power of being underestimated." As Thomas walked away, Reed and his crew watched the Thunder power up its primitive engines. The mighty warship would soon disappear among the stars, becoming just another human relic that somehow survived the centuries. But now they knew better. Somewhere out there, humanity's ships waited silently, their true nature hidden behind masks of age and decay. And anyone who laughed at these relics might find themselves learning the same harsh lesson as the raiders, that humanity's greatest weapon was never their technology, but their ability to hide it in plain sight.